Okay, we're continuing on section 5.3. This is lesson 28, evaluating trigonometric functions, part 3. And so we're going to continue on working with trigonometry. Here we want to approximate the value of each expression. Now notice here it shows that sine of 49 degrees, 12 minutes, and then they went ahead and gave you the decimal for that. You can go ahead and find that, work that out on a TI-84, and so you can do that by first we'll put in sine, and then we're going to put in 49. And then you see this angle right where the apps button is. There's an angle right above that. You hit secant and angle, and you see the degrees. So you can either hit 1 or hit enter for that. And then 12. Now we want the minutes. So we hit secant and angle, and we hit 2 for the minutes. And then we can close our parentheses, and there we go. 49, 12. Let me check the mode here real quick. Nope, I'm in radians. No wonder. Let me go ahead and switch to degrees. I didn't get the right answer because I was in radians. So good. All right, so let's try this again. Hit second and enter. And then hit enter again. And there it is. 70.756995, and it goes on. Okay, so you always want to check, your mode that you're in degrees. I thought I was in degrees. There shouldn't have been any reason to switch it to radians, but you always want to check your mode, okay? Even if you think it shouldn't be any reason to be in anything else. You never know. Sometimes it could be. All right. Questions with that? Now here for secant, let's look at that. Now notice for secant, we don't have a secant button on the calculator. Okay, there's no secant on here. So we have to use the reciprocal of that, which would be cosine. All right, so from that, we, where are we? We go to, oh, here we go. We have to use, basically, with this, secant of 97.977 degrees, that would be the same thing as 1 over cosine of 97.977. So that's why they started off with cosine. And then notice they used the reciprocal button on the calculator, but this works just as well. All right, so let's try that. So we put in here 1 over, and then I always like to use the parentheses, cosine 97.977. Hit enter, and there it is. Negative 7.2587. That's the same answer that we get here. Okay, I think it's a little bit easier to go ahead and use that reciprocal that 1 over. Okay, I think that works easier. All right, questions with that? Okay, so from there, we want to find the approximate value of the expression of sine of negative 246. Now notice none of these are special angles, are 30, 60, 90. So we have to approximate. What we mean by approximate is with the special angles, we could use a radical, we've got square root of 3 over 2 and so on. So that's an exact number. But these are approximate. We can't come up with a radical for it, so we have to approximate to a certain number of decimal places. So here you're basically just plugging in the calculator sine negative 246. All right, and you get 91.9135, and it goes on from there. All right, questions with that? Okay. Okay, we want to use the calculator to find the angle and the interval notation from 0 to, so we're only looking at the first quadrant here. Okay, so here we're given a value, but we want to find the angle. So basically what we have to do here is we have to apply the reciprocal to both sides. So from that, if we have here sine theta is approximately equal to, I'm going to give myself some room here, 0.967700915. Okay, so what we're saying here is we have to apply the inverse to both sides. So we apply inverse sine to both sides. Some books call it arc sine. Okay, and so when you apply the inverse and the sine, what happens is that it's like they cancel each other out. They're inverses of each other. So now all you get is just theta is approximately equal to inverse sine, 0.9677, and so on. So let's see what that looks like on the calculator. So we go ahead and apply that on the calculator. And so we put in there, we have to go to secant and inverse, because here's the inverse sine is right above the sine. And so we're going to put in there 0.9770915. No, there's a 6 in there. Back up. That should be 0.96. So we'll hit second and insert, put 6 in there, and there we go. It shoves it over 0.967700915. Okay, and then I always like to close the parentheses. I don't like to leave a set of parentheses opened up. So here we have 75.3999, and it goes on from there. Degrees. Again, you have to make sure that your mode is in degrees. Okay? All right, questions with that? Okay, and so there's our angle right there, 75 we'll round it off to 75.4 degrees. Okay, questions with that? Okay, so again, for secant, now here, we can't just put inverse cosine of 1.054. We can't do that. So what we have to do here is we know that secant is equal to 1 over cosine. So at this point, we can say 1 over cosine is equal to 1.545829 over 1. And so what we're doing here is we're flipping, or we're applying the reciprocal to both sides. So when you do that, the cosine, apply the reciprocal, now the cosine is in the numerator, and the 1.54, and it goes on, you flip that, and now that's in the denominator. Okay, so now at this point, now you can go ahead and apply inverse cosine. And so we could apply inverse cosine here. And that's what we get here. Okay? And so on the calculator, you're just going to hit secant and inverse cosine, and then you're going to put in 1 over. Okay, so let's see what that looks like on the calculator. Okay, so we're going to hit secant inverse cosine, and then 1, oops, I'm going to hit 1 first, 1 over, and then that's 1.054 5829. Okay, let me check that again. 545.829. Close it and hit enter. Okay, and we get roughly 18.5 degrees. Okay, and that's what we got here. All right, questions with that? Okay, find all values of theta in the interval from 0. Now notice that it's closed at 0 and open at 360. In other words, you can include 0, but you cannot include 360. So that way it's not, the same angle is not counted twice. Okay, so cosine of negative square root 2 over 2. Well, since cosine is negative in either 2 or 3, the absolute value of cosine is the reference angle. It's 45 degrees. And the angle in quadrant 2 is going to be 180 minus 45 is 135 degrees. And so for quadrant 2, it's 135, and for quadrant 3, it's 225. All right, so that goes back to knowing that your special angles, that for 45 degrees, 1 square root 2, and so for cosine of 45 is adjacent over hypotenuse, that would be 1 over square root 2, so that's square root 2 over 2. Okay, so basically what you're looking at is you've given the value, and you want to find the angle. Well, you go to your special triangle, whether it be that or the 60, 30, 90, 1, 2, square root 3, to determine which one of your special angles you're given. And since cosine is negative, you know that cosine is negative in either quadrant 2 or quadrant 3. So you look at the 45 degrees, and you're taking 180 minus 45, and that's going to give you your 135. And so the other one's going to be 180 plus 45. Okay, 180 plus 45, and that's where you get the 225. Okay, So you can have, in this case, they didn't specify which quadrant. All they give you is just this value. So in that case, you have two answers. You have 135 degrees and you have 225 degrees. Okay? So you have two answers here. All right? Questions with that? All right, so these are our answers here. Oops, I didn't want to do that. Undo. There we go. Okay, find all values of theta in an interval of 0 to 360. Okay, given sine is a negative 1/2. All right, so sine theta is negative 1/2. Well, sine is negative in what two quadrants? I'm going to minimize this. Okay, sine is negative in what two quadrants? Dylan? Three and four. Good. Okay. Well, looking at our special triangles, right? 60, 30, 1, 2, square root 3. Okay. We know it's not the 45, right? Because that's 1 square root 2. So sine is 1/2, right? Sine being, if we're looking at our memory device, SOHCAHTOA, all right? Sine, okay, is what ratio? Travis?
Square root of 3 over 2?
Yeah, for 60. Sine it for 60 is square root 3 over 2, but we want 1/2. So if we took this triangle, right, and flipped it, put the 30 here, 60 up here, and then we would have to take the 2 stays the same, but the square root 3 and the 2, and the 1 rather, switch places, right? Like the angle switch places, the side switch places, the corresponding sides switch places as well. So now, sine is 1/2 at what angle? Well, opposite over hypotenuse would make it square root 3 over 2, but we want 1/2. 30, right. Opposite over hypotenuse. So, but we're in quadrant 3, so this is 30 here. So we need to take 180, and then what are we going to do? Here's 180 to get this angle here. We want this angle here. So now we're going to add or subtract 180 from 30 from 180. Add, right. Okay, and so we get 210 degrees. Okay, well now we want to, I didn't want to do that. Now we want this angle. Okay, well the reference angle is 30 degrees. Okay, so now how do we find, we've got one angle is 210, but we've got to find the other one. What's that going to be? How do we find that? Sydney? Well, what is this angle right here? Well, I'll help you out here. It's 360. Okay? 360. This edge here is not letting me write the whole thing. Okay, this is all the way around. One time around is 360. So what do we have to do with 30 in relation to 360? Are we going to add or subtract? We're going to subtract, right. So this would be 360 minus 30. Okay, and so what do we get from that? 330, right. Okay, so we take the value. Okay, this is our value, and we want to find the angle. In the past, we were always given the angle, and we were trying to find the value. Well, now we have the value, and we're trying to find the angle. All right? So let's try the next one. All right. Cotangent of negative square root 3 over 3. Well, cotangent is the reciprocal of what? Travis? Tangent, right. So tangent theta is going to be negative what? If cotangent is negative square root 3 over 3, tangent would have to be what? Yeah, that's right. Negative square root 3. And we could put over 1 if we want. Well, tangent is negative in what two quadrants? Dylan? I'll give you a hint. They have to be different signs because it's sine over cosine. So what quadrants have different signs in them? Right, 2 and 4. For tangent, the angles are always going to be in angles that are 180 from each other, or quadrants that are 180 from each other. Always. All right? So tangent, if we're looking back at our special triangles, right? Where is tangent square root 3? Looking at these triangles here. Tangent. Remember now, tangent is opposite over adjacent. So would it be 60 or 30? Pretty much it's got to be either 60 or 30, right? So which angle has the value square root 3 over 1? Sydney? 60, right. Tangent is opposite over adjacent. Opposite over adjacent. That makes it square root 3 over 1. So that has to be 60 degrees. So again, you're working backwards. You're looking at the values and then coming up with the angle. Okay? All right. So from that, we know where our angle is 60 degrees. All right. So from there, we can say, all right, we know that this is 60 degrees, 60 degrees. Okay? For our reference angle. So now we can say that theta, now we're always going to either add or subtract from either 180 or 360, depending on which quadrant you're in. Okay, so Travis, let's look at this first one here. Okay, we want this angle here, all right? So, that's going to be what? How are we going to find that angle?
180 minus 60.
Right, 180 minus 60. Okay, and so that's, yeah, 120. Okay, so this angle here is 120. All right, so now, let's see if this, can you see that yellow? Or is that too, that's probably too light. Okay, now we want this angle here. Okay? How do we find that? Well, are we going to add or subtract from 180 or 360? Travis? Subtract from 360. Good. So that'd be 360 minus 60. And so our angle is 300. So we have two answers here. One of them is 300, and the other one is 120. Okay? So when you get your reciprocal identities, determine what the reciprocal is of that, and then come up with your angle. Okay? Let's try another one. Any questions with this one? All right, let's try another one. All right, secant. Okay, secant is the reciprocal of what? Dylan? Cosine, right? So secant is a negative square root of 2 over 1, right? Then cosine theta must be what? Negative square root of 2 over 2. Good. Okay, well, we know that square root of 2 over 2 is what angle? $30, $60, $90, or $45? $45, all right. So we know, and so our quadrant, right, since cosine is negative, what two quadrants are we operating out of now? Sydney? 2 and, remember now this is cosine. Cosine is like x or y. Yeah, 2 and 3. Okay, so here's 45, and here's 45. So we're operating on 2 and 3. All right, so we want this first angle here. All right, so how do we find that? Sydney? Yeah. Well, okay, what are we going to subtract? Good. 180 minus 45, right? And so that's going to give us what? $135, right. Okay, now how do we find the other one? No, I can't use blue. That's not going to show up at all. Okay, so here, now what do we do? Travis?
180 plus 45.
Right, 180 plus 45. Okay, and what does that give us?
225.
Right. Okay? And so those are those two angles. All right, questions with that? All right. Okay, here we have an automobile. Travels uphill or down on a highway. Experiences a force due to gravity. This force, F, in pounds is gravity resistance and is modeled by F equals to W sine theta, where theta is the grade or the angle. And W is the weight of the automobile. If the automobile is traveling uphill, the angle is positive. If the angle is traveling downhill, the angle is negative. Okay? So they don't give you any parameters. They just give you a picture to start with here. So we have to get what we need from here. Calculate the force to the nearest 10 pounds for a 2,500 pound car traveling an uphill grade of 2.5. So this would be W sine theta is equal to 2,500 is the W sine 2.5. Since it's uphill, it's going to be positive. So let's look at that on the calculator. 2,500 sine 2.5. 2,500 sine 2.5. Okay? And we end up with 109 point okay, that's right. 2,500 sine 2.5. All right. £110. Oh, okay. They have here 110 pounds. I have 109.048. So I actually have, so they want rounded off to the nearest 10 pounds. And that's why they have 110. We have 109, we ended up with 109.048. But since they wanted it rounded to the nearest 10 pounds, that made it 110 because it was 109.04. Okay? So that made it 110 pounds. Calculate F nearest 10 pounds for 5,000 pounds of truck traveling downhill. So that would be a negative 6.1. So that'd be 5,000 sine negative 6.1. We get a negative 530. Let's take a look at that one. Okay, so that's 5,000 sine for negative 6.1. Now you got to make sure you use that negative sign, not one of the blue keys, because the blue keys will give you an error. Okay, and we get a negative 531.32, but we want to round that to the nearest 10 pounds, so that would be negative 530. Okay, questions with that? Okay, calculate a force where theta is 0 degrees and 90 degrees. Well, 0 times any amount of weight times 0, that's just going to be 0. So sine at 0, right? This is 90. This is 0, 1. So, but we're looking at 0. So that's 1, 0 for cosine and sine. So that no matter what the weight is, this is going to be sine at 0 is 0. So that's any weight times 0, that's just going to be 0. You don't even have to know what the weight is for that. So here at 90, cosine or sine at 90 degrees is 1. So this would be W sine at 90 is 1. And so that's just whatever your weight is at 90 degrees. Okay? Questions with that? All right. Any questions at all?